Alice has a a passion in combining Power BI with graphic design, particularly within environmental data. And what she's going to do for us today is run through a session in bringing environmental data to life within Power BI. So as I mentioned earlier, Alice is based in Australia, where it is 5 a.m. and very early. And she's also part of the Australia and New Zealand Power BI Enviros meetup group. And a passionate advocate for women in tech. So it's an absolute pleasure to have you with us today, Alice. I will go on mute and hand over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Leon. And thank you, everyone, for joining as well. I'm really excited to be presenting virtually in the UK. So I'll just start my presentation now, and I'll just start sharing screens over here. Perfect. So as Leon mentioned, my name's Alice Drummond. I'm co-founder of DiscoverEI. And DiscoverEI, we're really about bringing together three different things. So we're combining Power BI, so data analytics, with graphic design and also environmental engineering to really try to bridge this communication gap and bring these three industries together. So I'm passionate about all things environment design and Power BI. So I'm really excited to be presenting one of my favorite topics today, bringing environmental data to life. So showing all of the cool ways that we can use Power BI to really try to communicate our data in a way that a lot of people can understand. And this is really important when it comes to environmental data. As Leon mentioned, I co-run the Power BI for Enviros user group. So if we have any other people working in the environmental industry or people who are passionate about the environmental industry and want to see some other cool applications in Power BI, then I'd love you to come along and join our user group as well. But today, what brings me here to present to everyone virtually in London? I don't have a background in computer programming. I haven't always been working in Power BI. So unlike a lot of you on the call, this hasn't really been always the direction that I've headed in. I'm actually an environmental engineer as my background, and I previously worked for about 8 years for a large engineering consulting company where I specialized in surface water and groundwater modeling. So really trying to help plan the future water supply and demand for cities across Australia. So what I really did was spend a lot of time in Excel land. I thought I was a really good Excel user. I wrote some really crazy macros, and I combined this with modeling programs and a lot of spatial analysis to bring together all of these different types of environmental data sets. But the end result was usually a really lengthy static PDF report. So just think of a 500, 1,000 plus page document with all of these repeating appendices where I'm trying to push in all of my different charts and graphics and things like that. And you could imagine just how difficult this would be for the end client or the decision makers as they're trying to sift through these very complex reports, and they'd end up just pulling out a handful of numbers to base their decisions on. So I was really lucky when a colleague of mine introduced me to Power BI. I remember I was literally blown away. I spent the entire weekend that I'd first discovered it, just sitting at my kitchen table and learning everything I could from that awesome edX course by Will Thompson. And I absolutely loved it. For me, really, the power was in being able to transform my 1,000-page document into almost a single-page interactive report. So I loved it so much that I decided to leave my really nice job at this engineering company, take a bit of a leap of faith with my husband, also an environmental engineer, and started up our own company, DiscoverEI, a couple of years ago. But we soon realized it's simply not enough just to present an entire project's worth of info on a single dashboard. Because what we would be doing is being almost like assuming anyone who'd pick up our report would be like mind readers. They'd know exactly what it is we're trying to show. So we can see that we've got a pretty plain report over here. What I want to do today is really show you how we can bring our data to life by using all of the really cool features of Power BI and combining it for the environmental industry. So we can really help to try and share that data story. So share what the key metrics are that we're trying to present, and also ultimately have a look at sharing that knowledge so that anyone who picks up our reports can understand what these environmental systems are that we're working towards. So I've got a short little video here just giving a sneak peek of a couple of different Power BI reports that I've been working on. And you can see that we can use Power BI in a lot of really cool ways. So it doesn't just have to be the static data. We can combine it with images, infographics, interactive maps. So maps play a really key part in any environmental project that I work on. You can see that lots of the reports are really graphic. And we're lucky in the environmental industry. Our industry is so visual. So we can really combine Power BI with images and videos to really try to create that emotional connection between the data and really paint a picture of all of these different environments we have out there. So with that, this is a Power BI user group. So of course we have to get into the demos. I've got a lot of different demos to cover today and lots of different environmental stories to share as well. So let's dive in. So this here is a report that we've created working with a regional water corporation here in Victoria. And what this page here is showing is 3 of the key storage systems which are managed by this water corporation. And you can see we've got a lot of charts on this page. We have some storage curves here. We have a total system storage with different restriction curves. So this is all about how to manage their water supply. But I'm sure a lot of you on the call are thinking, oh, okay, this looks kind of cool, but I don't really understand what is going on here. I'm talking about reservoirs and storage curves and water supply. And when we're working in the environmental industry, a lot of the Power BI reports that we're creating are being used not only by the operators of the system, but really as a stakeholder engagement tool. So talking to a lot of other people who are on top of all of these different water decisions. So people like the environmental regulators, people like the farmers, and just the general community as well. So it's really important to try to provide all of the context around these systems and provide supporting information to help people interpret what this data is showing us. So I'm just going to open up a short GIF here. So we've created a schematic of the system, and you can see that we're stepping through all of the key reservoirs. We have these 3 key reservoirs here and showing how it connects up to the system and how this ultimately is fed into the water supply for the Daylesford system. And I think that these are really effective ways of communicating environmental systems. And it's really great because we can embed these GIFs in Power BI. So to do that, we've got the GIF here. It's just a normal GIF, so it's almost like an image file. So within Power BI, we can host images. We can incorporate images into our reports. And the easiest way of doing this is if they are hosted on a website where we can get that image URL. So my favorite way to easily host images is by using IMGBB. So I'm just going to upload this image here. And you can see that we can get a direct link. So I'm just going to copy this direct link. And let's go ahead and insert it into our Power BI report. So we can do this in a number of ways. I might just make a new measure here. So if you had quite a few GIFs, then I would insert a new table. So you can just see here that it's that we can incorporate it in as just a normal measure in our Power BI reports. And then to render this GIF, we can use a custom visual called Image by CloudScope. So Image by CloudScope, there are two versions of this visual. There's a Pro version, which is certified, and then there's the uncertified version. So anytime that you're using an image hosted on an external website, you need to use the uncertified version. I'm just going to drag this in here. And you can see that we've got this GIF rendering now, which is fantastic. We've got that additional context, but it does take up a lot of room on my report canvas. And you can see that it's on repeat as well. So it could be quite annoying if we continually had this GIF playing. So I'm going to cut this. And we've got a blank page here. So we paste it in here. This page I've actually set up as a report page tooltip page. So if we have a look at the page options here, you can see under the page information, I've got it toggled on as a tooltip page. So if we go back to our demo here, we can use report page tooltips on a lot of the different visuals. Here I've just got it on as a table. And you can see now that if people hover over this system, they get this slowed down version of our waterway system. So it's a really nice feature, especially if you're using your Power BI reports for things like decision support tools or anything like that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that, Alice. And sorry to jump in here, but I think that's a very powerful feature. So if you wouldn't mind just kind of telling our users what the main benefits of using a tooltip as opposed to using that as a visual across the page would be.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, I guess we saw that if we used it across the page, then it takes up a really big section of our report canvas here. And having a look at the operating system, it's not kind of the key focus of this report. The key focus is these storage targets. So that's the benefit of having it as a tooltip. You can have it as an on hover so that people can just see it when it's popped up. But also we don't want GIFs on repeat. This is terrible for accessibility. And also it can be quite distracting when people are trying to interpret the report. So we could do it as a tooltip. You could also configure it as a bookmark using buttons as well to show and hide.
Fantastic, thank you.
Awesome, cool. So that's the first example I wanted to walk through. The second example, I'll bring it up here, is an environmental scorecard. So this is an example of a healthy waterway scorecard. So how healthy our waterways are looking both now and into the future. And you can see another thing when we're presenting environmental data is, especially if it's going to be used for things like public-facing tools or stakeholder engagement, we really have to take care about the layout of our reports. We really want to frame these reports and provide it almost looking like a nice glossy corporate report. So at the moment, you can see that we've got a lot of visuals. They're just kind of sitting in space here. One thing which I like to do a lot with my reports, especially working in the enviro industry, is to really take the time and develop a nice background to lay out all of these elements. So you can see here that I've got a background image. This is something that I've just created in PowerPoint just by layering shapes. And what we can do here with this report is if we add an image to the background, so just get back into my folders here. You can see that it really does help to bring together all of these different visuals. So using backgrounds is great. I'll just format these labels here. It's really great for combining different common groups of elements. So here you can see we've got 2 environmental scorecards. It really just helps our users direct their attention to the key visuals. So that's something that I like to do on a lot of the reports that I work on. But really what I wanted to show here is the benefit that we can achieve by adding images into our reports. So we've got a lot of text on this report. It's very text heavy. We've got text for our estuaries, rivers and wetlands. And we have a couple of case studies down here as well as these scorecards. So there's a lot of opportunity for us to bring images in here. And we're really lucky in the environmental industry. A lot of our data, it actually physically means something. So you can see here, as soon as we add images to this chiclet slicer, it just helps us process the data a little bit quicker than it would if it's just a plain text. So we can do the same things on these tables as well. So we can add in an image here into the column header, and same thing down here. And it just helps really to paint that connection between what this data is showing us, and also helps us interpret the results a lot faster. So especially when we have anything like site photos, that's so important to include to provide that additional context. And you can see just by those couple of small changes that we can really help to show exactly what we're trying to protect here. So this scorecard, it's really about how healthy are our waterways both now and into the future. So you can see another cool Power BI technique we've used here, which is using icons in these matrices to show under the current state how healthy the waterways are. So we're pretty high. In the future, it's projected under our current trajectory to still to go down to a moderate level, but we've got a target which should be very high for this environmental value. So you can see just by combining icons with these matrices, we can put a lot of that information into something almost that looks like an interactive infographic here as well. Cool. So that was an example of combining images and using backgrounds to help paint that environmental story. And my next example here is one of my favorite techniques and favorite things that we can do in Power BI. So this report here, I'm showing a handful of reservoirs across Greater Melbourne. And when I moved back to Australia a couple of years ago, me and Christian, my husband, we went out and had a look at all of these reservoirs. So we take drone footage as well. So all of these reservoirs here, we went out and had a look at the condition and took an aerial drone survey of them just to really paint that picture of what our reservoirs look like across the state. And one really stuck in my mind. It's the Melton Reservoir. It's located just west of Sydney over here. And when we went out, it was at the end of the summer back in 2019. And this reservoir, it was just so dry. It was the end, Australia had our hottest and driest summer on record. We've had some crazy weather lately, but back then it was really dry, and this reservoir was down to 3.9% capacity. So that's incredibly low. And you can see on the chart here that it does fluctuate. But if we're just having a look at the numbers, if we're just having a look at data on charts, it doesn't really mean anything, especially when we're trying to talk to different stakeholder groups, different regulators about what is happening across our different systems here. And that's where Power BI comes into it, where we can combine this data not only with images, not only with GIFs, but also with videos. So we can do that. I'm going to insert another a Power BI custom visual here called the HTML display. So I've got some drone footage hosted on a Vimeo account, and then I've just created some HTML tags so that I can bring this into this visual. So I'll just show you what that looks like. So if we go over and have a look at our storages table, you can see I've just kind of patched it together using kind of separated out different elements here just to really get the HTML tag in. So we can bring this in. And you can see that it looks like it wants to play in the Power BI desktop, but actually the videos, we can't actually play videos when we're in Power BI desktop. We have to publish this report up online to the Power BI online service to actually see what it looks like. So we can quickly publish this up, and then we'll have a look at what these reservoirs actually looked like when I was going across Victoria and at the end of that hot, dry summer. Were there any questions at this stage, Leon, just while we're waiting for it to publish?
There are indeed, Alice, no problem at all. So we do have one, it's from Shungu on, can you please explain how you dragged and dropped the images into the matrix in the previous demo? Is it just as a field, or is it a normal matrix or a custom visual?
Yeah, so that one is, it's a normal matrix, but I used in the columns, it's a hierarchy. So I'll just launch this one so I don't lose the link, but I can go back quickly to this one here. If I have a look, this is just a normal matrix. And you can see I've dragged the image, the image is an image URL, and I've just dragged it into a column field here. And if I go up, you can see that I've got a hierarchy on. So I've just gone expanded all the way down. And I did a bit of resizing of these columns. So I think this is a nice technique. You can have your first row as the different kind of group or your category or your title, and then the first column, and the second as the image. And when you expand it out, it just looks like it's got a nice category with an image underneath it. So it kind of looks like it's all in one.
Yeah, that's a really, really good technique. Thank you for explaining that for us, Alice. We do have another question if you'd like to take it now as well.
Yeah, sure.
It's how can we show source and destination within the Power BI map visual, like a start and an end point for a truck?
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, we'll get to mapping. I might leave that one till we get to icon map. We'll touch on that in a bit. I'm not doing lines, but essentially you could using icon map, you can plot 2 points and you can connect it with a custom line. So I'll show you that in probably like 3 demos time.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
Awesome, no worries. So now we've published our report up online and we've got our videos in Power BI. So you can see just what Australia looks like. It's a red kind of dirt. It's really dry. And this reservoir here, this is the one which was at like 4.5% storage. So it was really very, very low. We got there and I remember thinking, oh, am I in the right spot? There's just no water here at all. And in contrast, we can compare this to Thompson Dam, which was one of our biggest reservoirs in Victoria. And you can see just the difference. You can see just the scale of this reservoir. So using videos in Power BI, it's a great way to paint that emotional connection. So we can take what is just like a dot on a map or lines on a chart, and if you translate that into what it actually looks like in reality, then it can be go a really long way to getting a lot of people to understand what it is that we're working towards and trying to protect as well. Awesome, cool. So we've gone through a couple of demos here. really focused on the visual elements like photos, GIFs, images, things like that. And now I'm going to have a look at another report, and we're going to get onto another one of my most favorite topics in Power BI, which is mapping. So this report here, this report is showing what is our forecast supply and demand looking like across Melbourne. So I'll just note that this is prepared using synthetic data sets for demonstration purposes only. So our water supply and demand, this isn't what is actually happening in Melbourne, but I think it's a really nice example. What I want to highlight here with this Power BI report is when we're creating reports for the public or for environmental purposes, it's really important to take what we're presenting here and almost convert it into plain English text. So that's what I've done up here using these two what if sliders. Instead of just having a slider for population growth or climate change here, I've tried to put it in a nice kind of narrative, a nice sentence. So we can say, what if our population grows by 38% and our climate changes by 16% over this entire period? Then our water balance decreases by an average 324 gigalitres across Greater Melbourne. And you can see that that narrative up here, it's really dynamic. It changes whenever we interact or select different elements on this report page. And it really helps to try to tell that story about what this report is showing. So I think in all reports, it's important to convert our key message into plain English. But really for the environmental reports, where we're combining lots of different data sets and presenting it to a range of people who might not have a great understanding of this, it's really nice if we can put it in plain English. And I think a lot of people on the call here, you wouldn't be aware of what these different districts are across Melbourne. So we've got a report here assessing 5 different regions. We've got Dandenong, Werribee, Maribyrnong, Western Port, Yarra. They all sound just like very abstract. We don't know exactly where these districts are. And even if we lived in Melbourne, you might not have a really good idea. So that's where wherever possible, it's always good to present your data by using not only the numbers and the charts, but also to put it in context by using a map. So here we've got a placeholder for a map, but we don't have our map yet. So I love mapping. There's a ton of great mapping options available for us in Power BI. So today I want to show you 2. I'm going to start off with one of my favorite custom visuals for mapping, which is the Mapbox custom visual. And then I'll show you another really cool example using the icon map as well. So the Mapbox custom visual, it does take a little bit of getting used to. There's a few different hurdles we have to go over. So in this map, what I want to show is these catchments across Greater Melbourne. So catchments are areas, and areas, they're not really great if we're showing them just using a point. But really, I want to show them using what's known as a polygon. So just an area, spatial area on a map. So we can, I've got a column here for my district. So that's my Werribee, Maribyrnong, Western Port here. And I wanted to show the data here based on my average annual water balance. So I want to color it by those fields. You can see that we've reached our first hurdle here. I don't get a nice map just yet. I've got Mapbox kindly telling me the instructions. So I have to go online and get a free Mapbox token. So we've got our Mapbox up over here. So Mapbox, you can sign up for free. It takes about 30 seconds. I think all it needs is an email address. And after you've signed up, it will take you to your account page. And this is where we can get an access token. So this talks to Power BI and lets the Mapbox custom visual know that yes, we've got a Mapbox account, and it provides that access token, almost like a connection key. So we just go under the Viz settings and we can paste in our access token here. And then we get our next prompt, which is telling us that if we want a circle map, we need our long and lats. But if we want a chloropleth map, which is what we want, because we want to plot these areas, then we need location and color. So I'm going to turn off my circle map and put on my chloropleth map. And you can see that it's rendering a map here. So that's great. We got over the first hurdle. And if you have a look under the chloropleth options, we've got a lot of different options down here. At the moment, it's trying to bind my data to the US states. But what I really want to do, I've got a custom shapefile of my 5 catchments across Victoria. So I'm going to put in a custom tile set here. And you can see I need 3 pieces of information. I need this vector tile URL. I need the source name. And I also need the vector property name. So this is the binding field between my data and the column or the attribute in my spatial file. So up on Mapbox, we can use Mapbox to host our spatial files as tile sets. And again, this is a free option. I think there's a very generous free tier. And what you can do is you can just drag and drop and upload your spatial file. So I've already done this, but I'll show you what the key fields are that we need to grab from Mapbox to actually get our maps to render. So the first field here is our tile set ID. So I'm going to copy this. So I just went to the share and use. And then if we go back into Power BI here, I'm going to copy it in here. One thing to note is that we need to keep this Mapbox kind of extension at the start and then copy our tile set ID in here. So you can see that it's looking like it's wanting to render, it's going into the right place. The next step is we need to get the layer name. So this is the layer name up here. And we'll copy it in here. And the third step is we need to get this vector property level 1. So that's the basin name here. So this is the joining field. And you can see that it's rendered my custom map here, and we can interact with these catchments and filter the data. So there's a lot of cool things we can do in Mapbox. You saw that it does take a little bit of getting used to. We need a third-party tool, Mapbox Studio, to host these files and get the access tokens. But I think what it does do is it really provides that additional context. As soon as we can see our catchments, so here we are in Victoria, this is the area I'm talking about, Greater Melbourne. It really does provide that additional context. And if we have a look under the Viz settings here, we can change our map background as well. If we want, we can add in a custom background, so we can design our own in the Mapbox Studio. And I've got a video blog which goes over how to create your own custom style as well. So this is Mapbox here. You can see that it's a really cool map. It does a really nice auto zoom as well. So if we go back into this page, you can see that it's got a bit of a wow factor. It has that really nice slick zoom in, especially if you're using your Power BI reports for any sort of public stakeholder engagement. Those little features, people love it. It just gets people excited about the data, which is what we're trying to do.
I totally agree, Alice. I think Mapbox is a fantastic visual. I was going to ask you, is Mapbox a certified custom visual by Microsoft?
No, it's not. So it's an uncertified custom visual, and I don't think it will ever be able to be certified just by the nature of the visual. So for any visual to become certified, it has to go through a lot of different check boxes and checks and balances, but one of them is you can't read in external files. So here we're reading in files from an external site, so from the Mapbox site. So it's the same as the HTML content that relies on external HTML, the same as the CloudScope image, which relies on external URLs. So any of these custom visuals which rely on external data, unfortunately, it's really hard for them to become certified.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you very much for clarifying that for me. I do have a couple of other questions, which it might be a good time to interject with them now.
Sure.
Is a few people within the chat are asking if you will be able to share the PBIX files following the session.
Yeah. So I can't share the PBIX files. This one is one we actually use in our training course. But I've got majority of them up on our website if people wanted to play around with the front end and have a look at some of those tools, like some of the visuals and things like that. If you go to our website, so discoverei.com, I think on lots of the pages we have a lot of these examples.
That's fantastic. And we've had the same question in terms of the backgrounds as well. So the PowerPoint files, which you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so the PowerPoint files I created, I would really recommend going on to Agile and Alluring Analytics. I think Chris Hamill's blog. He's got a really cool background gallery library, which is where I got it from. So if we have a look at this, I think under here we've got the background galleries. This has a ton of really cool PowerPoint background layouts that you could download. So I just took one of these and just edited them. So I think that would be a really good starting point. Otherwise, I know Chris Wagner, so Kratos BI, he has some PowerPoint backgrounds, and also powerbi.tips. They don't do PowerPoint, but they have some really nice, slick layouts, and they call it scrims for framing your report.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think we should use this as a moment to kind of demonstrate your Power BI training course as well. So is that open to the public or is it private sector only?
Yeah, no. So we've got yeah, thank you. We've got 4 different training courses here. So we do both public and private training as well. So if you have a small group in your organization who are keen to do any training for the water, environmental, or groundwater industry, as well as a designers masterclass, then let us know.
Absolutely fantastic. I'll share that in the chat as well for everybody. We'll just do one last question before I let you continue, Alice.
Awesome.
And this question's from David, and it is, do you consider your consumer/audience when building these dashboards? For example, professional environmentalists versus the general public? And if so, how does that affect the design choices which you make?
Yeah, definitely. That's a really great question. And we totally do. So it really does depend on the study. So I've worked with working with water resource engineers and kind of plant operators at some other regional water corps, and those reports are really technically focused. So we have a lot more matrices. We have lots more line charts. They don't need so many maps or graphics or for it to look really nice, because what they're really interested in is the data. So there we would highlight things like outliers and kind of do almost exception reporting, alerting them to areas of the plant which need attention, or areas of the system where the water quality exceeds certain thresholds. So it's a very numerical based. So those reports are really good. They just want a quick snapshot of, okay, what do I have to check? But we wouldn't want to present those to external stakeholders or the general public. So when we're communicating to a wide range of audiences who aren't the subject matter experts, then you have to provide that additional layer of context to help get that collective understanding. So anything like maps, anything like graphics, infographics, images, things like that, which can help break down those barriers. We would try to put a lot more of those in if it's a front public facing report versus a report which is just being used by a team internally to assess plant performance, for example.
Fantastic.
So yeah, definitely
answer.
think about your audience when you're designing the reports.
Perfect. Fantastic answer, Alice. Thank you for that. I totally agree. I'll let you continue now.
Yeah, no worries at all. And fantastic questions. Thank you so much. So I think this is my last demo that I wanted to walk through. We'll see how we go with time, might be second last. But I really want to cover off on icon map. So we saw Mapbox and we saw how great that was for creating a map pretty quickly. But it does have a few limitations. So one of them is we can't do report page tooltips, which is something that I love. So the nice on hover effects for visuals. And also what it can't do is it can't combine points, lines, and polygons all on the same map. So I know this might seem a bit odd for maybe people who don't work across the environmental sector. But in the environmental sector, we really need a really rich mapping tool because we're dealing with areas. So whether it's like a lake or a catchment or a district, and we're dealing with lots of points. So whether that's like a key kind of forest or a wetland location or a pump station, and then we're dealing with lines, so rivers and pipelines. And it would be really great if we had a visual which could combine all three. And so that's where James Dale's icon map comes into it. So this is probably my new favorite mapping visual in Power BI. Like Mapbox, it does take a bit of a learning curve to get there, but it's well worth the effort. So here in this report, I wanted to show Victoria's water resources and key environmental assets, and give a snapshot of the percentage of surface and groundwater which we're using. But you can see this map at the moment. I've just got the standard map here. We've just got a handful of points plotted because I really want to have both the points and polygons. I want to show my water corporation districts across Victoria as well. So I'm going to convert that over to the icon map here, and you can see it plots in the UK because James Dale's is based in the UK. I reckon he set his area to be the default, so we want to be over in Australia here. So let's go and fix up our data. So you can see I've got some points here. I'm going to bring my latitude and longitude in here. Just make those averages. And there's a couple of required fields here in the icon map visual. So one of them is an index. So we need to have a unique ID on how we're categorizing these points. So what's our reference? And we also need to have a size, I think. Here it is, the size. So even if we don't use it, I'm just going to put a dummy value in here. We'll just do count of index. We need that size to render. So you can see that this doesn't look any better, if not slightly worse than what I previously had. So let's make it a little bit more exciting. So you can see we've got an option here for icon URLs or WKT or SVG files. And in this measure, I'm combining some icons with a WKT file. So WKT is well-known text, and it's a type of file, like a spatial file format for spatial data. So we can actually load that data into Power BI. It's stored as text rather than hosting it on a third-party site like Mapbox. So you can see here I've got polygons and points on the same map, but it's still not looking very impressive. So let's have a look at some of the other really rich formatting options we've got available here. So we can bring in a custom fill color here and a different region color as well, an outline color. And let's make these icons stand out a little bit more. So we've got some very tiny icons at the moment. I want to make those a bit bigger. Let's change that minimum size to be maybe 20. Cool, and you can see that now we've got different reservoirs, we've got forests, we have rivers and areas for our water corp as well. So we've got a lot of formatting options we've got available here. So I really recommend taking the time exploring all the options we've got available in the icon map. You can see that we've got Mapbox. We could add a custom URI as well. So I might just do a Mapbox background here. So we need to just go back online to Mapbox and get a new, get another one of the access tokens for this to render. So we'll just copy this one in. So you can see that once you learn one of these mapping tools, they really kind of feed off each other. One thing about the icon map is it is a little bit sticky when you're creating it. So if it doesn't look like something's rendering when you're first loading it, definitely just go out on a new page and come back in. It just kind of refreshes the cache. And lastly, one of my other favorite features of this visual is it allows report page tooltips. So we can see here that we've got an option for report page tooltips. And bring in this one. And now when we hover over these different water corps, you can see that we've got a lot more information. We could provide whatever info we wanted for all these different assets here. We can see the wetlands, we can see the lakes. And when I was chatting with Leon last night, he mentioned that he's got a data challenge out at the moment about visualizing tree planting. So I was thinking the icon map, this would be perfect for that data challenge. You could show the trees being planted on a map. And coming back to that question we had earlier in the presentation about how could we show maybe the source and destination of a truck or some sort of vehicle movement. You can see that we can do that in the icon map. So if we bring in a longitude and a latitude, you can also bring in the longitude and the latitude of a solid line or a dotted line. So you would just have the long and lat of you just have to structure your data in the way. So you'd have a table and then you'd have a row, you'd have long and lat, and that's your start and end point. You can connect it up with a line using icon map.
That's absolutely amazing, Alice. And I think everybody within the chat feels the same. We're getting some fantastic comments back on the icon map.
Yeah, the icon map's awesome.
I'd just like to say a massive thank you to James Dale as well. So James Dale is obviously a Microsoft MVP as well, and he heads up the London Power BI user group. So please do take a look for them as well. And thank you, James, for your continued work on Power BI.
Yeah, he is awesome. It's amazing what he can do. And I think he's in the process of doing a little bit of an update and a rebuild. So there's some exciting new features coming out with conditional formatting and a couple of other cool things.
Yes, he actually lives quite close in terms of geography to myself, and James is definitely a map guy.
Yeah, oh, I love it. It's so cool. It's amazing that people are doing this for free out there in the community. Like that map alone has unleashed so much potential for me. So I'm always sending him a lot of thanks.
Oh, and the icons, the idea for the icons is absolutely fantastic, and it adds, I think we touched on it briefly earlier, it adds that extra level of detail for users to be able to look at a glance.
Oh, definitely.
And really will resonate across stakeholders.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, it's an awesome visual, and it just gives you so much more context as well by adding the icons in. It's so cool. If there's time, Leon, I just wanted to wrap up just with one last quick example to show a public-facing Power BI report, which I've created working with the Australian Water Partnership and the International Water Centre.
Definitely.
So awesome. This one, I think it's just a really nice one to tie together. A lot of the examples that I presented today have been synthetic or just demo examples. Because while we do work a lot with lots of stakeholders and kind of in the public realm, environmental data does have a lot of sensitivity around it. So we can't present a lot of examples that we've been creating. But this one, we're really excited. This one is a public-facing Power BI dashboard tool. And it was all around visualizing the water security risk index for COVID-19 across Asia Pacific countries. So we all know that with COVID-19, it's one of the biggest things we can do is to have good hand hygiene and sanitation. So that's really important. And it's something that we might take for granted living in the developed world, that we've just got access to clean and safe drinking water. And that's not the case for a lot of countries across the Asia Pacific, where it could be quite challenging for them to get clean and safe drinking water. So this study, it was a collaborative study between some researchers and different government organizations to bring together all of this research around both water security and also the threat of COVID across the Indo-Pacific region. So because this is a public-facing tool, we've got a lot of icons and images here. So you can see a lot of the techniques which I've been talking about previously. And of course, it's got hero visuals being a map. So here we can see we're using, I think this one's the field map, which has report page tooltips to show the overall risk rating and different risks for different key temporal elements which were assessed. And you can see that we've got a lot of different icons and graphics here. There's lots of extra information we can get on hover, and we're really trying to keep it really visual as well. We've got another smaller map here because some of these islands are tiny. So if we were to display them on the field map, you wouldn't get that same resolution scale as well. And then we've got a lot more detailed information here. This is really for like the researchers who are very interested in what metrics were assessed. How is this tool being used as well? And you can see that we've got opportunity for community feedback here, and you have the option to download the actual supporting PDF report. So this tool is an online tool. It's really intended to complement all of the rich research prepared in this report as well. So it's a great example of showing how Power BI can be used not only as an analysis tool, but really as a communication and almost like a reporting tool to try to share these findings with a wide range of audiences and complement those lengthy static PDF reports that I was talking about at the start of the presentation. So thank you so much for sticking around and joining me this late in your evening, early in my day. And I really hope that I've been able to share a couple of examples to help spark your creativity and imagination and show you how we can visualize both environmental data, but almost kind of any data in a little bit of a different way using some of those techniques which I showed.
That was absolutely amazing. Thank you, Alice. I'm sure that everybody's giving you a virtual round of applause wherever they are in the world currently. I know that I am. And just want to point out one thing I've never seen before, which was amazing, is the use of it looked like a bookmark to use to be able to download different versions of the report.
Oh yeah. So that's just a bookmark with a URL link. So if you click on that, then you could it just downloads it.
That's fantastic. I've seen bookmarks used for many things, but never for download URLs. So great tip there. What we'll do,
you can
Alice,
also download the data as well. So
perfect. We have a couple more questions. I know that it must be nearly 6 a.m. Where you are right now.
No, go for it. This is fun.
Okay, so we have so on I think it was 2 demonstration PBIX files ago, you had some arrows that showed the difference. And we have a question from Pilar, which is asked, how do you manage to incorporate and condition the arrows from the difference column?
Yeah, so this is using conditional formatting. So here I'll just select this. So this is just a normal matrix, no custom visual. And if you right click on your values field under conditional formatting, I've used icons here. That to open up, and you can see that it's just conditionally formatted here, just using a rule. And I think these are just the standard icons out of the box.
Fantastic, thank you. We have another question from David, and what he asks is, in terms of the custom visuals you use, they're obviously beautiful and add a lot of value to the dashboards, but do you encounter any issues with support or license changes? And what considerations or caveats do you apply in selecting any custom visuals for use?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I think you do have to be wary of using custom visuals, especially if you're developing a tool for a client and you're not working in that organization. So it really does depend on the purpose. We always make it known, and we check with the Power BI admin whenever we're using custom visuals, because as you know, they can block the use of custom visuals at an organization level. So we always check off with that. We put caveats around that custom visuals are unsupported by Microsoft and they're subject to change. And that's something we saw with the CloudScope image custom visual, I think in the middle of last year. it changed, and any reports using it wouldn't render those images anymore. So that's a big consideration. And the third thing is, if you're creating reports for public-facing dashboards, always make sure that you check these visuals across a whole range of different browsers, because they don't all work the same. So like Mapbox, for example, doesn't render on Internet Explorer. And you'd think, who uses Internet Explorer anyway? A lot of the Australian government uses it. So, so you do have to check. We always put browser compatibility in our proposals if we're making any sort of public tool. And rendering time, performance, there's a ton of considerations.
Very true. Thank you very much for that, Alice. I just wanted to say as well, because you mentioned Chris Wagner earlier, he just joined us late to the party,
hi,
but I thought I would that we would mention he has joined because he did get a mention earlier within the webinar.
I pointed them to your awesome backgrounds, Chris.
I'm sure that he's applauding virtually as well. So we actually have Chris joining us in a couple of weeks for a session as well. So please do keep your eyes out for that to be posted very shortly on LinkedIn as well. And in terms of Alice, I think that, like I say, people's minds are still blown from that session, because what you're doing not only with environmental data, but for Power BI on a whole, in terms of visualizing and demonstrating data to organizations, is fantastic. We've touched on some points there, which I'm sure that our user base would like you to elaborate on in the future. So, for example, the use of the what if functionality. Also the icons, we had a few questions around the icons in the images. So I think that if it's okay with you, we would love to have you back in the future to maybe elaborate on some of those advanced techniques.
Yeah, no, and if anyone is keen to learn a bit more, we've got for the icons and images, I've got a blog up on our website here as well, all about where to find, how to host and incorporate images. There's that one. We've got 4 on Mapbox, if anyone's keen on Mapbox, and we've got a whole series coming on Icon Map as well. And yeah, so there's a few things here, but I would love to come back. That would be awesome.
Oh, definitely. I will be holding you to that. Thank you very much. I've just put the link for the blog into the chat as well. Awesome. Where can everybody hear you do your next session? I think you've got quite a stacked calendar, haven't you?
Yeah, so I'm presenting at the Sydney Women in Biz Apps group next week on, this is just on the Power BI roadmap. But after that, I think the next big thing is Rezarad's Global Power BI Summit. So this is going to be an amazing conference. There's a really good lineup of presenters, and he's doing 3 different time zones. So that's happening, I think, towards the end of April. That's the next big thing. But otherwise, if anyone wants to hear awesome presentations, not just from me, but from the environmental community in Australia and New Zealand, then we'd love you to join our Power BI for Enviros meetup. So our next session, we've got, I think, presenters presenting from our environmental regulator here on a public-facing dashboard, which we've been working on with them, and also another girl presenting from another regional water corp, all about the cool things she's doing in Power BI as well.
Oh, fantastic. And Chris is definitely in the room now. We can see it in the chat. So
yeah.
Perfect. But no, Alice, thank you. And for those of you not aware, Power BI Summit is pretty much the must go to Power BI event of the year. So please do take a look for that and make sure you join us at that event. And Alice, thank you very much once again. I'm sorry to have gotten you up early, but what an amazing session. So thank you very much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thanks to everyone for joining and all of the very interesting questions. That was awesome.
Perfect. We will be putting the recording up very shortly. So once again, thank you, everybody. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you've been with the Microsoft Power BI UK user group and Alice Drummond of DiscoverEI today. So thank you very much. Stay safe.
Thank you, everyone. See you later.
Thanks. Bye-bye.